Hi everyone, I'm Gavin. Smartphones. How many of you have one? Show of hands. So, pretty good deal, you all. Now you see these little, yet absolutely amazing inventions have made it beyond easy for all of us to stay connected, basically at all times. But like, ask yourselves, should we stay connected at basically all times? Being 100% true to that statement can pose serious safety risks if someone decides to check their text messages, email, play Angry Birds, go in the App Store, while behind the wheel of a moving vehicle. According to the World Health Organization, over 3,400 people die on the world's roads every day. And on top of that, the National Safety Council reports that cell phone use leads to 1.6 million crashes each year and nearly 330,000 fatal injuries occurring each year from those accidents. And while this can possibly be accredited to the advancement of the handheld smartphone technology and the reliance/addiction people have on them, me included, we do, in fact, have laws prohibiting the use of phones while driving. Something, it seems, over half the population seems to forget on a daily basis if you've ever driven here in California. Since these laws have been implemented and not much positive change has happened since then, over the years since then, one can only see that the fear of the punishment now for breaking this law is not nearly great enough to deter people from breaking it. This is why the current penalties for using one's cell phone while driving are insufficient. I will prove this to you all by first explaining with the current laws how our world is being negatively affected by this crime. Second, showing why the current laws are not nearly severe enough for the fatalities and injuries they can, will, and have caused. And finally, showing how the current laws are simply not stopping distracted driver-related accidents from occurring. My first supporting claim about why the current penalties for using a cell phone while driving are just not good enough is that the statistics blatantly show how this is a serious issue and must be addressed. The Association for Safe and International Road Travel stated in their annual Global Road Crash Statistics Report that each day in the United States, approximately 9 people are killed and more than 1,000 injured in crashes that are reported to involve a distracted driver. They also stated in the same report that road crashes are the leading cause of death among young people ages 15 to 29, and the second leading cause of death worldwide among young people ages 5 to 14. Now, as we can see, young adults are at some of the highest risks of everyone on the road. Yet, according to AT&T's annual Teen Driver Survey, whose purpose is to recognize the dangers of texting and driving among our nation's youth, 97% of teens surveyed agreed that texting while driving is dangerous, yet 43% of them still admitted to doing it. And that was only the ones that admitted it. Now, as we know that drivers under the age of 20 have some of the highest proportion of phone distraction-related fatal crashes, we can see how both the statistics show that this is a serious issue in the amount of deaths and injuries it causes, and how change is needed to bring these numbers down. My second supporting claim is that the current laws are not nearly severe enough here in the US for the injuries and fatalities they can, will, and have caused. Let's put it in the context of our state here. So the penalty for the first offense here in California is a base fine of $20, and each subsequent offense increasing the fine to $50. However, after assessments and taxes are added, your first fine is going to look more like $150, and your second one is going to be more like $250, and so on. But ask yourself, is putting your own life and the lives of those around you, whether that be your passenger or a pedestrian, just to check your phone, is that really worth risking that? Really just worth a measly fine of $150? I don't think so. More than 30 countries around the world have made it completely illegal to use a handheld device while driving. In the country of Oman, drivers caught using a handheld device can face up to 10 days in jail and also face a maximum fine of about $780 US. In Trinidad and Tobago, drivers can face imprisonment for up to 3 months for the offense. In the Philippines, repeat offenders can be slapped with a $400 fine and lose their driver's license completely. And since these countries have enacted such laws, distracted driving crimes have drastically decreased. And I know for a fact that if such laws existed here in the US, you would find much less people knowingly break this law daily. My third and final supporting claim is that the current laws are simply not stopping and have not stopped fun-related accidents from occurring since they have been enacted. The CDC, in a yearly statistic report, found over 37,000 people die in road crashes each year, and an additional 2.35 million are injured or disabled, and that number has steadily increased over the years. Over time, as the number of distracted driving fatalities has also increased over the years due to the ever-growing population and the advancements in technology. According to the World Health Organization, almost 40% of the time when concerning distracted driver-related accidents, that offenders are repeat violators. Maureen Vogel, spokeswoman for the National Safety Council, says, the United States needs to hold a mirror up to itself and examine what it is doing on traffic safety versus comparable countries around the world. According to reports by the CDC, the U.S. had the most motor vehicle crash deaths in 2013, with 10.3 deaths per 100,000 people, compared with 10 other high-income countries, including the UK and Sweden. The U.S. also had the lowest reduction in crash deaths between 2000 and 2013, compared with 19 other high-income countries. To summarize, the current penalties for using your cell phone while behind the wheel are simply not good enough to prevent it from happening. Because the statistics show how bad the numbers really are, the current punishment for breaking the laws do not deter people, and the current laws simply don't work in stopping people from texting and driving. Thank you.
All right, Gavin, you do have a proposition. It gets kind of buried a little bit through an extensive introduction. You've got a lot of background information, and then you get to the proposition. I knew it was the proposition because I was listening for it, and I think other people probably will have picked it out, but you should help them a little bit. And don't be shy about saying, like I said the other night, I said, don't be shy about saying, so the proposition that I'm going to be arguing for is this, because that'll make it a lot clearer. Casual listeners need some assistance, and I think yours is a little buried because you had all that other information first. However, if they're paying at all any attention, you did have a preview that followed it almost immediately, so people should have been able to figure that out. The preview sounds a little redundant. It sounds like you're saying the same thing 3 different times, and so you need to either find a way to combine those ideas, and let's just have one claim there, which I don't think is a very good idea, or figure out what it is the inference is on each of those points and how they are different, and clarify that in that setup. I do think there's a little bit more difference in the supporting points when you get to them than when they are presented at the beginning of the speech. And I thought it sounded a lot more clear what the difference was when you got to the end of the speech and you're giving us the summary of what your argument was. It's a lot easier to figure out, oh, well, that's what's different about each of those points, and that's how it's building together to reach that conclusion. So you want to do the same thing at the beginning of the presentation. You have a lot of information that you're citing in the speech, so let me give you credit for that. You've got a ton of statistical information that you're citing. You give sources for every piece of information that you've provided. I thought that was very reasonable. There's a lot of factual data in the presentation, although we don't always get sources for those sorts of things, like what the fines are in California or the places in the world that have additional laws. I know you got that information from someplace, so you want to be citing that kind of information also. But for the most part, I thought you did a very good job on that. I do think that one of the things that's missing in the argument is you say at one point in the countries that have made these changes have lower, and I'm going, and I got so many statistics before. Where's the statistic now that shows me that they are in fact lower? And again, a source on that, I think that's probably the key thing that's missing in the argument. In the body of the speech, everything is signposted pretty clearly. You do a very nice job speaking to us, even though you have to use your phone to do so. Distracted speaking is also a problem, and I watched somebody do this last night in class, use their phone to read their message, and it does look a little odd when you're holding the phone that way. I'm going to share an experience with you that is not a big deal, but it's a nice illustration of how there's an unintended effect. My son-in-law tried to do his vows from the phone during the wedding. And he kept having to move his phone around here and there, and of course, he's trying to flick through the pages while he's doing it, and he got lost a couple of times, and he mutters under his breath, "Worst idea ever." And I'm sitting there going, now are you talking about your use of the phone, or are you talking about marrying my daughter? You know? So you might want to think about the impact that it's going to have on the audience. Now I understand you're just making do with what you had, but that's one of those things that you want to pay attention to. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.